All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of Debate Night. I guess we can call this the World's Preview Debate Night. We have Worlds starting up tomorrow. We're going to talk a lot about what could potentially go down. We have a full cast this week, a very good cast this week. We got a lot of former champions, very dominant personalities. It's going to be an interesting one. We're joined, as always, today by the birthday boy, Brodie. Happy birthday.
Can I see the picture of the trophy for the show today, please?
What do you? Yeah, here it is. It's the Zaxby's Cup.
Fantastic! Can't wait.
Did they pay for that placement, or
well, the reason
that one away?
I like Robbie's too.
You get?
The reason why it's that cup though is because the first time we did Debate Night, I had Zaxby's, so
this is
it's really sentimental.
Right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll use that.
You guys do have Derek Carr now, so
we do.
That's cool.
We have Derek Carr now. That's a fact.
All right. Anyways, we're joined by Brodie. Dustin is also joining us today.
Indeed, I am.
He's here.
I'll be hosting all week during Worlds. So that's gonna be
true.
Cool.
Keep an eye out. Tournament Central. Be there.
Indeed.
Robbie C is here. Another Alabama native.
Roll Tide.
Traded on me last time, of course, but
yes. And then we are joined by Tyler Tulowitzki.
Coming to you exactly from Worlds this year. I'm here on the site, so I'm ready to enjoy it. Also, quick shout out, save Stafford Woods.
Okay, yeah. We actually reposted that petition if you want to.
What course are you on right now? I don't remember seeing that backdrop.
He's actually
on the
outside
course.
your house.
If you actually look out your window over your left shoulder,
the same place. Brodie, on the trophy subject, before we get started, has anybody laid eyes on the World's Trophy this year? Have we seen it yet?
Yes, Ezra's parents, and all they said was the FPO one is a little smaller than the MPO one.
Oh no!
Which might make some nice,
not good.
Might make some nice talking points.
That's like the one thing that's like the one thing that would have been easy to get right. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that. All right, before we get into the first topic, just want to give you a quick word from our sponsor today, and that is BetterHelp. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals, regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human that lives in this world who is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that's why I'm super excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in just a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. It's betterhelp.com/foundation-disc-golf. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really like the fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. Guys, I can't recommend this enough. I know a ton of people in my life who have benefited from therapy. If you're going through something difficult and you just need somebody to talk to, this is a great tool to use to really improve your mental health. I would really recommend this. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/foundation-disc-golf. Thank you again to BetterHelp for supporting the channel. Let's hop into the show. All right, we're going to hop right in here. Worlds this year is obviously taking place at both Brewster's Ridge and Fox Run Meadows. These are the same courses used for GMC. These are courses that we're familiar with. It's quite a direct correlation. Now, there has been a few changes to the course, but it'll play pretty similar. So we've seen Worlds many times in the past use locations and courses that are essentially the same as a tour event. Other examples would be last year at Emporia and 2019 at the Ledgestone setup in Illinois. We see some changes from year to year, but this happens quite often. So my question is, should Worlds try to pick hosts that aren't normally featured on tour, or is it smarter to use proven courses that fans and players are familiar with? Brodie, what do you think?
For Worlds, because we're not talking about other majors here. We're talking specifically Worlds.
Yep.
It's a really good question because I don't think there's actually a right answer here. I think you can go both ways with it. I think the main issue I would have is, do we have courses that aren't currently on tour or aren't currently trying to be on tour that are good courses? That would be my big question, because I think we will eventually get to a point where there are, let's say, 100 courses that are awesome courses, and courses that also can be tweaked to become very difficult as well. They might not be, tour level where they currently are played at normally, but you can go in and add OB, you can extend tee pads, you can move baskets around, and then all of a sudden it becomes a very tour level, high level course. I don't know if we're there yet, because there's still some courses that we play on tour that players are saying, why are we playing this course? But I think eventually when we do get there, there are going to be obviously courses that you can't play all those courses on tour. So I like that idea. I'm going to spin the question a little bit and say the only thing I will say is, if we do go to a course that we already play on tour, whether it's last year or in previous years, going there and playing the same exact course again, I think is missing a little bit. We're missing a little bit. I think you have to try to buff it up for a major. I think you have to try to make it a little bit more challenging, a little bit harder. It can't just be the field. It has to be, the course needs to be a little bit more spruced up, I guess you can see. And that could be also too, like, different things. That doesn't necessarily have to always be difficulty. That can be more infrastructure. That can be just more things to do. Like, you don't want to show up to Worlds this year and be like, oh, well, I can't really tell the difference between this tournament and last year's GMC. That's kind of my point. Other than just the PDGA banners that now say PDGA Major.
Right. No, that's a good point. Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for an event as prestigious as Worlds and as important of a tournament as it is, I think you do want to be using a proven course that has been played before at some point on tour. I just think that that's important for, familiarity with the course from a production standpoint, understanding how to set up the fan experience, understanding how to just have the course ready to go for really everything. And obviously it's good for player preparation as well. At the same time, you obviously don't want situations where Worlds are taking place at a place that you've already played that year. So this was a massive problem with Emporia when we had Worlds and we had DDO basically taking place on the same properties in the same year. And this is even the case as well back in 2021, where I think one of the courses that was used for Worlds was also used at the Utah Championships out in Ogden. So you obviously don't want that repetition within the same calendar year for sure. And as Brodie said, I do think there's something to be said about taking the course, if it's on tour normally, but for Worlds doing something a little bit different to kind of spruce it up. I know there has been some changes, for example, at GMC this year for Brewster and for Fox Run. Now, I'm not sure if that's World specific or if that is just changes to the courses that will be there, indefinitely, going into for future GMCs when it's not Worlds anymore, like next year. But I do tend to agree with that line of like, hey, let's do something a little different if we're going to reuse a property. Also, just generally speaking, for these world events, I mean, again, you want them next to bigger cities for logistical purposes. And in the situation of Smuggler's Notch, it's kind of more of a resort thing, so it is kind of like a vacation destination. So it kind of makes sense in that regard. And also, generally speaking, I like seeing a property for Worlds that is not only testing one style of golf throughout the World Championship. I think it's fine for tour events. I think it's even okay for some majors, but for Worlds and even potentially like the Tour Championship, I think all elements of the game should be being tested. And that's just another reason why I thought something like Emporia was an issue in the past when we talk about Worlds. But, obviously, when you think about some of the examples you cited, like a Ledgestone or like a GMC, you are playing on properties that do have two contrasting courses. And so you are getting that diverse skill set being challenged throughout the course of the Worlds. And to cap this off, I will say if in the future we do find some type of high quality property that we can use for Worlds that can be unique to Worlds, that's not going to be on tour in the future, I'm not opposed to that. I just think, as Brodie said, we're not really there yet as far as like finding that property that we can make world specific.
It's definitely a pick on the safe side. It's a good point about the Utah. I think it was the Utah Open or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was an A tier.
It was the week before Worlds to cap it off. It was really an interesting move. Robbie, what do you think about all this?
I think if we're going to use courses, I can go back and forth on if playing them the same year necessarily I think if you combine Brodie and Dustin's answers, I think you end up with a possibly really interesting situation using a course that we've known can be successful. So the issue of coming back to a course is, especially from a fan's perspective, it's somewhat confusing. Like, okay, well, we already watched them play like Emporia this year. Obviously, the conditions were a tad bit different between Emporia, the Dynamic Disc Open, and how Worlds went down last year. But I think that it creates interesting storylines on the are we coming back to this, as long as once again it feels different for the players when they arrive. You don't have to, you can modify the courses. We saw them testing that last week or 2 weeks ago with Deaglo, and modifying pin positions. So I think that's an infrastructure piece that they can add in to actually make it unique, and it allows the players to have even more prep to make that best player have to stand out. And okay, let's try to make it so the approach is going to be different, or the tee shot's going to be different, whatever that could be. I think that for me, it's also very exciting knowing that like next year's Worlds, we don't have a quote proven course to the tour. We have, like, obviously tour level players have come out to Lynchburg and played, but whether they've played New London, sorry, words are hard. Whether they played New London, Ivy Creek is still going to be a new course that people are going to have to experience. And so I think whenever you put an untested course in front of players, most often, if it's not coming in at a silver level, I feel like people are more critical than accepting. So I think the disc golf world has kind of shown that they don't love bringing in untested courses. And so I can understand the fear of not only the PDGA, but hosting cities and trying to just make that huge jump.
Certainly one less thing that the tournament directors have to worry about when it comes to criticism. If they pick a course they already know people like. Interesting that they picked Emporia. Anyways, Tyler, what do you think about them using the same courses?
Yeah, so I'm going to use my ball golf experience to kind of talk about what the PGA Tour does. If you look at Pebble Beach, they run an annual tournament there every year for the PGA Tour, and they go to Pebble Beach for the U.S. Open every once in a while. So I think you can definitely use the course that's proven. Obviously, the PGA Tour has chosen that they can do that. You just got to give it some teeth. Like, you can't just play the same course because it just gets redundant. So they got to do something, either bring in OBs, do something, give it some more teeth, because you can't just throw in more natural rough necessary. You can't just plant something to make that change. So another things you can do is, I think we got to really evaluate about changing the baskets around and giving the tournament director some more choices about how you can make the course harder because of that. So I think that would be really enjoyable. And I think something that I've also really enjoyed seeing on social media is players really enjoy coming here. So if you give them a venue where players come to enjoy the nature part of it, where they are, you're seeing more. When they were at Emporia last year, you just saw them practice on Instagram, and then that was it. But here you're seeing them enjoy all the other nature parts. So I think it's really a good decision to choose something that's proven, especially for Worlds, but they got to find a way in the future to give courses more teeth when they go to a Worlds location.
Yeah. I think, creating something at least a little bit different is important. You don't want to feel like it's a rerun of an event we know. But there's a lot of upsides, I think, in the safety for the Pro Tour and the PDGA and making that decision. So this is the course we've got. We're going to be playing at Brewster's Ridge and Fox Run Meadows, 2 proven courses. And I think a lot of people do like the setup of having the woodsy course and the more open course, especially for Worlds. That kind of feels like almost the identity of this tournament a little bit. But my question is, do you think that 5 rounds at the chosen courses will provide the best opportunity for the world's best player to emerge victorious? Do you like the chosen ratio of 2 wooded course rounds at Brewster and 3 rounds at the more open course like Fox Run? Would you change anything like that? Should it be 5 rounds? How do you feel about the format and the courses that they've chosen, Dustin?
All right. So look, in an ideal world, I think you would have equal rounds at both courses. And in this situation, that would mean extending the World Championships into 6 rounds and having 3 rounds at each course. I think that could be a more ideal situation, just to make sure that players are getting tested on both courses in equal amount. With that said, though, with Fox Run being favored a little bit, I guess, in this ratio by getting that extra round, there is a slight bias towards a more open style of golf. But I would argue that Fox Run is not just some type of Heiser Fest on 18 completely wide open holes or something like that either. I do think that there are a lot of holes at Fox Run that require you to have good placement off the tee, require you to have some good touch up shots to be able to make sure that you're getting yourself in good positions for birdie. And I do think that you are still being tested on a pretty diverse skill set across the course. I'm not going to go every single hole, but just to like name a couple of highlights. I mean, you got, hole 5, that's a very tight par 3 between the OB and the basket placement. It definitely tests your accuracy. I think hole 7 has changed this year as the par 5. Like the shape's a little bit different from when I was watching Brodie and Ezra's practice round, but I still think that that is a hole where you have to be accurate on each shot to make sure that you're staying in bounds and staying in play. If you look at a hole like hole 9, for instance, that was a hole that last year was bogey near 40% of the time with only 50% of the field birdieing it, and it's still a very demanding hole. And I think 11 is kind of a similar boat. 12 got made harder this year, adding some length and a new tee location. So did it not? Yes, it did. I was watching on your video. 11, the tee got backed up. Did it not?
Talking about the par 5 now?
Yeah. Did it not get backed up?
Yeah, they also made it a par 5. Easier.
Yeah. So I was just saying that it has been changed up a little bit, and it's still requiring.
It's more difficult. It's not more difficult. Sorry.
We'll see how it plays out. My fault. Like I was just saying that there were changes there. And then on and on. I do think that the point is that there are some tricky holes at Fox Run that do require good play. And to wrap it up, 40% of the competition is still taking part in the Woods and Brewster. So you're still getting that difficult Woods challenge for players for a good portion of the tournament. And I know for a fact that there were definitely some holes there that were changed and made a little bit more difficult based on the Ricky practice round I watched and what he was talking about. So all in all, I think you are going to get the best player decided throughout this tournament with the 5 days and with the challenges that are out there.
Yeah, and you're right. Fox Run, while it is the more open course, is certainly not some kind of Heiser Fest. There's still a lot of challenge there, especially when the wind picks up. Robbie, do you like the way they have things set up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you go to 6 rounds, if we're going to 6, I think we continue to leave the door open to, all right, why not 7? Why not 8? And then we're back to rounds being 11 rounds for Worlds, and players are exhausted, and we're taking 2.5 weeks. And honestly, I don't really have to tune into Worlds until like day 3 or 4 because it kind of doesn't matter what's happening on the first couple of days. I think that lengthening it, sure, I can understand. I like the 2 and 3, and here's why I like the 2 and 3, because Dustin said it, 40% of the tournament is going to be decided by Woods Golf. And I think that's actually not even a good representation of what players have to play on throughout the entire year. We don't have 40% of the courses they're playing on being dominant wooded courses. And so if we're looking to get a picture of what player is the most dominant player, what player is the best player in 2023, according to the Disc Golf Pro Tour, according to major professional disc golf, I think we're going to get a really good show of this. You also touched on it, Trevor, why I like Fox Run being where we're going to spend more days, especially with turbulent weather. I think that you're less protected out there. And when we have more open style golf and the weather doesn't cooperate, sure, when the weather does cooperate, it makes it, quote, easier to score. But when the weather doesn't cooperate, we then have to test an entirely new set of skills. And then you have players having to step up and be course managers versus, okay, awesome, this huge par 3 on hole 5, I can just rip one, or not 5, maybe 6. My number is going to be confused in my head. I'm not playing the course.
5.
Yeah, over the water. Okay, cool. So suddenly that shot becomes significantly dicier when the wind picks up. And so I think that having the more open opportunity, once again, everyone said it's not that easy to score, even if it is, quote, open. I love the fact that we have more chances for the wind to actually cause a little chaos while we're out there.
Yeah, it certainly can become a huge factor on that course. Tyler, what do you like about the setup?
Yeah, I think 5 rounds are just fine. I think when Brodie and Paul talked to Ken Climo about, he said he wants to go back to the old style because it's about endurance and finding the cream of the crop, which I think is a good point. But I think Robbie also brings up a good point, is that it's not just about them, because before it was like it was just them playing the tournament, and it was just finding the best of the best in whatever format they wanted. But now we have a large media coverage of it, and like Robbie said, you're not going to watch until it gets interesting the last couple of rounds. So it makes it super difficult to advertise over camera for a long period of time. So I think five rounds is totally fine. I think it's entertaining. We've had great disc golf the last couple of years with the Holy Shot and with Paul making a big push down the stretch to push it into extra holes last year. I think it's fine. It's proven that 5 rounds works just fine.
Yeah, it seems like they've kind of settled into the 5 rounds now. Bro, do you like the 5 rounds in the courses they've chosen?
Well, I'm going to spin it a little bit because everyone's talking about, okay, let's go to 6 or 7 or 8. Well, why not go to 4? No one's talked about you go to 4. Now it's 2 and 2. If you're trying to be, 50-50. And if the answer is like, oh, well, this is Worlds, it needs to be 5. I don't know, man. I don't know if that should be the qualifier for a world championship, is that it's just a longer tournament. I could totally see it going to 4 and having other qualifiers that make it a world championship, whether it's more of an international field, whether it's the courses that we're playing, whether it's them making the courses more difficult. I think all those things make a lot more sense to qualify it as a world championship than just extending it a longer time. Now, obviously, the more you extend it, the more you are going to have the best disc golfer win, right? So if world championships was 12 rounds, I think all of us would be dumb not to put money on Calvin Heimberg to win. He would be the heavy favorite if it was 12 rounds. And that's where I also think that maybe 4 rounds might make a little bit more, might bring a little more interest, because at the end of the day, yeah, sure, we definitely want to see, good disc golf. But as fans, we also want to be entertained. And there's a lot of sports out there that have a certain length of their tournament or their event in a way to where there can be upsets. There can be kind of Cinderella stories. And the longer you extend the tournament, the less likely that's actually going to happen. So I wouldn't be opposed to 4 rounds. I think that could make it for a little bit more spicy than 5 rounds.
Yeah, it is a weird balance. For whatever reason, Worlds, I think it's because the sport has put so much emphasis on the idea of a world champion that everybody kind of has this idea in their head that they want the world champion to be one of the best players in the world. We don't really talk about that with the other majors, like making sure the best player wins. We just kind of accept that it does happen quite often. So I do think that's it's still trying to find its identity. Honestly, Worlds is still a work in progress, especially when now the other majors have become a lot more typical. They're even playing on the same courses. So it's certainly kind of the outlier, but people still care a lot about the title. So we're going to talk a little bit about what may happen over those 5 rounds. Now, obviously, a lot of people mentioning Calvin Heimberg with a 5-round tournament having all that time. So my question here is, who is your favorite to win Worlds in the MPO division? And who is a player that could steal it that people might not expect? Robbie.
I mean, thank goodness that the extremely biased opinion guy got to go first on this one. So I get to pick Calvin as my pick. And it's like Brodie was in my head about the number of rounds. I think that we've seen Calvin do really well, obviously in 3-round tournaments. We've seen him do extremely well in 4-round tournaments. Problem is, Calvin has 1 round pretty much every tournament that is below his quote standard. It's his bottom third. And that bottom third is still better than a lot of people in the field, but that 1 round is taking him out of contention. Add a 5th round in there for Calvin to continue to shine. And I think the field needs to be nervous, because we can see Calvin can pop off and set a course record very easily. And now he has even more opportunities to do that. We know that he's an extremely solid woods player, as well as one of the most accurate people and consistent players out in the wind. So he's not there's just so many factors playing in his advantage for this. And I think that it's very, very high chance he's going to get there. But what's more interesting to me is the person who has the chance to steal it. And I'm going with the DJ master himself. I think Kevin Jones has a chance to take this. And, we're not going to talk about momentum here. Why not? No momentum here. It doesn't exist. But I will say that we do know Kevin Jones has actually won an Elite Series event at GMC before. In 2020, he won. And you may say, oh, 2020, that was the COVID year, not a full field. I mean, not a full field considering second place was Paul Macbeth, third place was Ricky Wysocki, James Conrad, Eagle McMahon, Calvin Heimberg. He beat Paul by 4 strokes that year. And seems pretty interesting. So he has the confidence to win on this course. And I think if you look at how his season has gone towards this later part, the man is storming down. We have a 7th place, then a 5th place, then a 3rd place. That's too close to each time. It's in the stars, y'all.
Yeah, I like that Kevin Jones pick a lot. I really do. Tyler, who do you have?
So you got to go with the main man, Paul Macbeth, just because of the statistics of the last decade, right? 1 or 2, you got to go with your guy that you know is going to finish up there. The other thing is that like people can talk about all the things he's had to go through this year, especially he's got a newborn on the way, thinking about his family and whatnot. But one of the things that I think most people know about GMC is you have to be able to scramble, especially in World tournaments. You have to be able to scramble well. And Paul Macbeth actually has a very good scramble rate this year. I think he's in the top 5 in scrambling this year. Yeah, he's in the top 5. So he can scramble. We know that. He plays well. He always comes up in the clutch in big moments and big tournaments. Like, this is something that we already know. So he's like the obvious guy to choose. My spicier guy, I think, in my opinion, to steal it could be Nicholas Antela.
Ooh.
So he's played well in big tournaments. Did not play well in last year's Worlds. But he's played well in big tournaments. He's finished in the top 5 in a lot of these tournaments, especially at very difficult courses at USDGC. He plays well there, it seems like, the last couple of times. So he's my guy to take it. We'll see what he does. And I'm excited because I think it's really wide open out there for anyone to take it this year.
Antela, I like it. All right, Brodie, what do you think? First to Brodie. Is Brodie frozen?
Brodie frozen.
On his spin, then
there you go. You're back.
You're back, Brodie. Can you start over?
We lost you for a second. Start over. You're back.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry. I was agreeing with Tyler in saying that these courses, the way that they are set up, it is kind of anyone's chance. You know, if Worlds was at D-Glow 2 weeks ago, there's a list of guys that I can just say has no shot at winning. But because of length isn't really an issue on either of these courses. These courses are actually some of the shortest courses that we play on tour all season. You're going to have the entire field be able to compete here. So am I allowed to pick like Calvin again, or is that?
Yeah.
Go for it, bro.
Okay. Well, I'll give you three guys that I think are going to perform well. Calvin, obviously, Ricky, and then I would say Gannon Burr. Those would be my 3 guys that I think are going to perform really well. And then one that's probably not that many people are talking about. He actually just won the doubles with Owen Scoggins. That's Joel Freeman. I think his game works really well on both these courses. There are a lot of forehands on Brewster that with his his flex forehand off the tee fits really well for a lot of the holes. And then, I think he's a solid enough putter to get the job done. It's just going to be, can he do it when the pressure and the nerves are the highest? That's something that's kind of unproven at this point in majors, but you never know, man.
I like it. I like the picks so far. All right, Dustin, round it out for us. You got.
All right, so I kind of have 2 favorites here, which I know is going to be cheating, and you're going to hate it, and you're probably going to dock me points, so I'm going for it anyway.
I'm just kidding.
All right, so this is a conditional one. So if Gannon Burr can get a hot start, I'm going to give him the nod as being the favorite to win the whole thing. And the reason for that is because this year, every time that he has been able to get a hot start where he's been able to either have the lead after the first round or be within 1 or 2 strokes to the leader after the first round, he has always made a run for the win. And he has either gotten the win or he's podiumed at this, point in the year. So with that being said, I think if we see him be able to get out the gate clean, I think he's going to make a massive push to be able to get the win here. He already has 5 wins this season. A couple of them are silvers. So, take that for what you will. But outside of a few hiccups, he has often been in the top 10 or better He's currently ranked in the top 5 in the world. He has a great all-around game, and I think he has had a pretty solid summer session so far this season. He is crushing it. Number 1 in circle 2 putting at 43%, which is going to be huge out there on some of these holes where you may not be getting those circle 1 looks. And he's always been really good at finding the circles in regulation, birdieing, and his C1X putting is obviously also fantastic, which is going to serve him well out there. So I'm going to give him the shout. If he's able to get a hot start, I think he can go ahead and take home the win, get his second major ever. But without a hot start, with it being a 5-round tournament, with how consistent Calvin Heimberg has been, I don't think you can really bet against him. I mean, he has 3 wins this season, 2 elites, 1 silver, 10 additional podium finishes. He's only had 1 finish outside the top 10 all season long, and he's a stats leader in almost every metric besides some of the putting stats. So obviously he's going to be way up there. Now for the steal, slithering in the camo, the limestone laser, Chris Dickerson coming in for a potential steal here. Now, I know he's had a couple of slow patches this season, but he was able to get a podium at the Music City Opens, had a couple of top 10s out there, including the European Open and Major. Just took 3rd at D-Glow, so he's kind of trending in the right direction as far as getting to a win. He knows how to win a major, obviously won Champions Cup last year. He's always been really solid at Worlds. When you look through his career, like he's always definitely been like in the mix, like in the top 10 in contention. And as we were talking with Robbie C over there, kind of mentioning, some past results of a guy who's done well at GMC in the past. Let's look at Chris Dickerson. Came second in a 3-way tie in GMC last year. I believe Matty O was involved in that tie, and Isaac Robinson, if I'm not mistaken. 2021, your champion at GMC, Chris Dickerson. Then 2021 GMC, he was just outside the top 10. Then in 2019, he came 4th. So he's had a lot of success on these courses and on this property. And so I'm taking Dickerson for a steal.
Yeah, I like Dickerson a lot.
Can I throw out one more thing?
Yeah.
Is this Nate Sexton's year?
I don't think so.
Because Brewster,
I can't hear Tyler for some reason, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, he's asking if it's Nate Sexton's year. Explain yourself, Tyler. Explain yourself.
I mean, you said Brewster, you need a good forehand. It's the shortest Worlds that we've had in a long time. I mean, why not? Why can't Sexton finally get one? I mean, Barsby took it the last time we had a Worlds here, so why can't Sexton?
He does have a good point.
I mean, you know what?
Yeah,
fair enough.
This is his best chance.
Fair enough.
This is his best chance to ever get one.
Fair enough.
He's got a USDGC. He knows how to persevere through tough conditions. I mean, why not?
You know what? Each year, there's usually at least a name that pops up early in the tournament that we all like. It's been like Emerson Keith in some years. What were you saying, Brodie?
Well, Tristan Tanner was leading the tournament last year out of the B pool.
Yep. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
That's because we played 2 different courses, though.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I could see Sexton showing up. It'll be interesting. Hey, you said it first. You have dibs on that take. So if he wins Worlds, just know Tyler said it first. All right, we're gonna hop into our last topic for elimination here. So we were talking a little bit earlier about the idea of, does the world title like have its identity? To like, what is this major really? It rotates courses. It has 5 rounds. People could still consider it the highest honor in our sport, but really why? So my question is, does a world title still carry the most weight of all the major championships? If not, which major does? And if so, will another major catch it in the future? And you could add which one you think will. Tyler, what do you think?
I hate to say it. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I think Worlds is prestigious. Obviously, I'm here for the tournament. I want to be able to view it. And I know Worlds tries to do different formats to try to make it more prestigious than everyone else. But, I mean, I feel like a lot of the players deep down inside know that USDGC is the one they want to win. I mean, Gannon Burr said that last year. I mean, I know he won it, but that's what he said last year. Because it's just a difficult tournament, right? And if you think about in ball golf, everyone in the United States wants to win the U.S. Open. They want to win the Masters because of the tradition. I think you could compare that to Worlds, but U.S. Open is just such a mentally grueling tournament. And when you look at USDGC, very same thing. And also, it's regular. It's just a regular tournament. They come, where you're going to get there. So I think USDGC is the one. I hope they do something more prestigious in the long run with making the courses difficult but fair in the future. So that's my take.
Yeah, I think that's a solid argument. USDGC undeniably very prestigious at this point. Brodie, what do you think?
I'm going to say hard disagree.
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear that this tournament for the players means the most out of any other tournament. I think the easiest way to see that is the fact that in the past, these silver events that were in between tournaments, in between elite events, or even in between majors, when they were on the way and they made sense, the majority of the people stopped and played them, and no one played last week. Even though it was on the way, it would have cut your drive in, would have made your drive, I think, a third. So you could, drive a little bit, play a tournament, and drive a little bit more. You look at European Open, we all played, the majority of us all played the week before in Norway before the European Open. It wasn't like we were like, no, we need to take a full week off and get there. If you are out on the grounds before Worlds, you will see the practice baskets, more people at the practice baskets than you've ever seen before. I was actually talking with the guys the other day about how last year I remember practicing at different hours, after my rounds and whatnot. And even before, and like there was really not that many people at the baskets. Now you will always have 1, 2, maybe 3 people practice putting, no matter what time you get there. So I think too, like the level of preparation is increasing from even before. The one thing that I would say that maybe over the years for like the fans and whatnot has made Worlds maybe drop a little bit is just the field now. We see this field at more tournaments than we used to, right? So I think that's maybe where it has dropped a little bit for the fans' perspective because it's not as unique as before. But I can guarantee you from a player's perspective, and I might have to talk to Gannon about that. I'm pretty sure the majority of people, if not everyone, would want to win this tournament over any other major.
I'd be curious to get that as like a survey. Somebody needs to do that for social. Like ask everybody if they'd rather win this than any other major. I know you. I think
just
USDGC,
financially too. Financially, this is the big for the everyone on tour. This is the tournament that will financially make you the most money.
Well, I mean, you cared so much a few years ago. You bought out the whole driving range. So
yeah,
have you had to do that yet this year?
No.
Okay.
There is no golf up here.
All right, Dustin,
ski slopes.
Dustin, do you agree? Do you think it's the most prestigious still?
I think so the question was does it carry the most weight of any major championship? I think when you're trying to make that assessment, sometimes you have to take your individual thoughts out of it and think about, well, what does it do for the entire sport and the overall community and just kind of looking at everyone, right? And I think that when you're doing that, Worlds obviously is always going to be the cream of the crop. I mean, whenever you're assessing a player's career in hindsight, Worlds is usually going to be first on your checklist of well, how many Worlds did they win or how good did they do in Worlds? Then you're going to go to the other majors. Then you're going to start going to your tour wins. And then eventually you'll start doing things like overall consistency, ranking, the eye test and just how good they looked as a player throughout their career. But Worlds is almost always one of the first things that you're going to look at when you're talking about a player's legacy. I think that Brodie's kind of right on the money. I think there are probably some players out there who maybe have a bit of a bias towards USDGC as being something that they want to win more than Worlds. And I think a lot of that just comes down to maybe that's just something that influenced them a lot when they were growing up and learning about the sport and following the sport. And seeing some of their favorite players take down USDGC titles, maybe it has a special thing. I mean, in Gannon's case, the dude was playing out at that course when he was 10 years old or something like that, and that's why I had kind of a special tie to him in particular. But I think, as Brodie said, the vast majority of people would pick Worlds as if they could win one thing, that would be the thing to win, because it's the financial gain, it's the prestige of being called Worlds. It's not only the money that you win for the purse, but it's also you get a disc that says you are a world champion. You got that X or 2X or whatever it is next to your name forever. you're always going to be celebrated. Now, I do think USDGC is a very close rival through the prestige of the event and the history of the event. And I think that, all the majors are going to present like difficulty and things that make it important to players and will certainly buff up their resume. But I also think that when you look at Worlds, you have to also look at what is the impact that it has for the sport outside of the endemics, right? Obviously us hardcore fans, we're following everything. We're seeing, all these different things and kind of keeping up with everything. But think about the type of pop that something like a world championship is going to get outside of endemic coverage. Like that's the type of thing that is going to be able to spread to other things, like more like traditional coverage from other sports and things that nature even start getting mixed in at that point. So yeah, I think bang for your buck, Worlds is always going to be number one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the endemic push there. That is definitely a valid part of the title. And another good point there was the name on the disc thing. I'm convinced that how that started early on in disc golf has become such a humongous part of why people care about Worlds, because the sport has decided to, like, when you get that title, it becomes part of your brand. And we're going to give you a disc. And I mean, if you're Ken Climo, that guy is still making residuals off of discs with, say, a world title on it. So like it's a very big deal. Robbie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, going last on this one, bit of a toughie. A lot of great things that have been said, and I agree with lots of them. I think that for me, while Worlds does hold the highest regard just because of, I mean, if you take that financial incentive of largest, like it's a huge purse, you also have the financial incentives of getting a stamped disc, getting your name on that. But the thing is, like, depending on the major of choice and depending on the company, I mean, you have people like Innova who boast the fact that, and granted, it's because they have Barsby, who's a world champion, and yet they're not pushing Barsby world champion discs all the time. So other major titles you can still push. I think while Worlds holds the highest regard right now, until it finds consistency or until it lands at that dream property, to throw it back to the first question that we talked about, where it's going to have this consistency, I think eventually Worlds could end up getting passed by USDGC because of the things Tyler was saying in terms of it's an expected course, it's an expected fight, and you know what to see on those things. And Brodie's throwing his hands up like that made confused. And yet there are so many people, including the analysts who's sitting here giving the points, who, when we look at Greg Barsby's 2018 Worlds, because of how it went down and because of this moves around, there was moments where they're like, I just like Greg Barsby has won. Okay, cool. The only time that we've ever put a sort of caveat on a win at USDGC is when Germ won it. And that was because weather literally canceled the event and they went in. So we aren't disputing or lessening any victories outside of weather related events. And we do that to every event. Whether you have, you had someone win this year on a round got canceled. You had double Ledgestone winners last year because weather canceled the event. So while I think that Worlds holds a high place now, if they just continue to let it be the rotating carousel, I do think, to honor the question, which is what we're supposed to be answering, I do think it will be passed one day by USDGC.
Right. I agree. I think I agree with that. Oh, Tyler, do you have something to insert?
Yeah, the thing that bothers me, hold on. The thing that bothers me most about Worlds is that it's not like, it has weight, but it's not like exclusive. Like USDGC, you have to qualify, and Brodie's been thinking about qualifying for events all season, and so it's just more exclusive USDGC. And the reason why it's not like that for the Worlds is because they want to be able to say it's the highest payout, so they're going to have all these people come play in the tournament to have that. So that's the thing that bothers me most. I want Worlds to be an exclusive, like, royalty win, and I don't think that Worlds has that compared to USDGC. But I do agree with all of you. Worlds really does have the weight, but USDGC is like cream of the crop winners, in my opinion.
I just have one question for Robbie. All right. And Robbie, I'm not trying to attack you, buddy. I promise. But you said that one day you think USDGC can surpass Worlds if Worlds kind of stays on a similar trajectory that it's been on. When is that going to happen? Because USDGC's been around since 1999. So how many more years do we need for USDGC to surpass Worlds at
when
that
it moves
point?
Courses?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that would do it? Like, for real?
No, I'm just saying that's the funny thing of being like USDGC is so awesome because it's at that course, and it's not going to be at that course forever. They've talked about it's going to have to move.
It's literally Worlds. If you put Worlds at Winthrop, then that is so much more prestigious than what USDGC could ever be if you just DGC went anywhere else. It's the course and the prestigiousness of the difficulty.
Well, I'm saying we're not going to be able to stay on that course forever. They've already talked about having to move it.
It's just one word. It's Worlds. That's the only thing that separates the tournament from USDGC, in my opinion. It's just that one word.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that I think the word Worlds is what makes Worlds, a pretty big deal. And I think USDGC, as far as I think it is the probably the best run event. It gets a really good fan presence. I think that it has a lot of momentum, but yeah, they will have a hiccup whenever they have to move away from Winthrop, and hopefully they follow it up with something good. All right, we're going to do some eliminations now. Dustin and Robbie are moving on. Tyler and Brodie are out of here. Let's head into our rapid fire round. All righty. We've got Dustin with a 1-point lead over Robbie. We've been here before. This is
Robbie, do you want to donate some points before we start?
This is a great,
good this time around.
Great finals matchup.
Bro, if I got to talk for 2 hours on each point like you did, I'd probably also have 14 points.
Okay. Well, it's not my fault that you weren't as prepared to handle all the facts I was laying
that
down.
Man. He didn't even use his fast talking to his advantage this time. He just talked longer.
My
God. God bless Robbie.
I don't think I talked any more than most of the other people
Emptied
here.
the
That's all I'm
clip.
going to say.
Timestamping comments.
All right, go ahead.
Gosh. All right. Well, do you want to go first or second, Dustin?
I want to go first.
Okay. On to our first topic here. Who is an MPO or FPO player that their window to win majors is closing quickly, and winning Worlds now would be huge for that reason? That window is starting to slam shut. Dustin.
All right, this one's close to my heart. It's going to be Matt Oram, a.k.a. Matty O. Obviously, he's an Alabama boy, lives only like 15 minutes up the street from me. Amazing person. Everybody, if you've seen his personality on broadcast, he's that way in, normal life as well. Just an incredible guy. But I think a lot of people do consider Matty O to be one of the best, if not the best, who have never done it in MPO when it comes to not only getting a major win, but just getting an elite win or something along those lines. He has one silver event to his career, and he's obviously been very successful in Southern Nationals and like always being like a top 10 consistent player. He's been doing it for a very long time as well. I mean, this is a guy who took second at Worlds in 2005. I mean, that is a very long time ago. And I think even in 2023, he's still playing some of the best golf of his career. He's actually throwing further now than he used to like just a year ago from talking to him. So he's still making improvements to his game. So the guy is still a very elite competitor. But at the end of the day, like while there are some younger players out there who are incredibly talented who have not won a major or have not gotten their elite win, or even some guys who are a bit more tenured like Calvin, those people still have like wide open windows and a lot of years left ahead of them to be able to make that happen. Whereas when you look at someone like Matty O, I mean, he's hitting his mid 30s right now. And he's likely starting to probably hit, I think this year is a contract year for him. So I don't know how many more contracts he's going to get that's going to allow him to stay fully on tour and allow him to still, keep going after major titles or keep going after the tour. So I think that, he's really the answer for me for this one.
No, I like that. That's a good pick. Definitely the definition of a guy who would need to get it soon, like this year, next year, maybe, because that window is definitely closing. Robbie, who do you think's window is closing?
Got to be someone near and dear to Foundation's heart on this one because of tour life. I do think that it's I think it's Paul Ulibarri.
Ooh,
because we've got
that.
Paul Ulibarri, who just got moved off of the elite team onto the icons team. And while we can say, okay, it's because sure, he's an icon of the sport because he is, and he's had a major impact on it. Let's be honest, we all kind of believe behind the scenes we had to make room on the roster for people who are actually coming out and trying to compete week to week. And we need those players to have the spots and looking at it. And sorry, Paul, you're holding up one of those spots. So I think it's a smart move by Discraft to brand him in that iconic moment into that lead. But also, let's talk about, a player who actually has a very real chance of making this a reality. Fun fact, if you go back and look at Paul on this course in this tournament, in his entire career, the worst that Paul has ever finished at GMC is 10th.
Ooh.
And that is not just talking like, oh, yeah, he's on the limestone lasers world of he's done really well the last few years. Paul's been doing this since 2008. The man has not missed top 10 at this event in all of those years, including the year that Barsby won Worlds. He was only a stroke behind Paul sitting in third. He podiumed that year. So
Dang.
I think that you have not only a like, do we want our hopes and dreams to live out here? Paul Ulibarri is a person who could put the stamp on this and then not be on the Icons team because we had to put him there as a discraft spot. He becomes an icon as a world champion.
I gotta say that's a 4-pointer. That's a very good stat. I did not. Man, you even told me. He texted me last night. He was like, I got to get to the first question because I found this crazy stat. That's insane. Nothing worse than 10th at those courses. That's a really interesting stat. And wow, that would be. I mean, the fans would be losing their mind if Yuli took down a world title in 2023. That would be quite a story.
So many Raptors.
Oh my goodness, so many Raptors. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that one because that would be a fun one to follow. Okay, we're gonna move into our next topic here. So the reason we didn't talk about FPO favorites earlier is because that would be a pretty rhetorical question. So I'll just ask this: which FPO player has the best chance to dethrone Kristen? And feel free if you really think Kirsten's not the favorite. Now is your time, Robbie.
Yeah. So I mean, if anyone tries to argue, Kristen, if I was going second and I like had to shoot for the moon, sure, I'd try to. Being Robbie C, I'd have to come something crazy to try to say Kristen is not the favorite. But yeah, I think that to me, it is going to be Owen Scoggins, which like we look at last week, right? Or D-Glow, she's one of the most consistent players on tour. It's not her distance that gets her elite status. It's not her like. She's not doing anything flashy. She's just consistent. She's making putts when she's supposed to. She's hitting fairways when she's supposed to. She is the epitome of like what Sexton's doing on that side of safe Sexton golf. Owen's doing it on the other side. And so if Kristen comes in and is having a rough week, I think Owen is the consistent player right behind her. The reason Kristen is beating Owen consistently is she throws just a little bit farther. She's making a few more putts. But we saw what happened in a Kristenless field. And obviously I'm taking Paige out of the equation. She's not here. But like, I think that heading into this, Owen has the consistency. She's now won. And we know Happy Owen is going to be just stoked to get out there and compete and stoked to see, hey, can I win 2 events back to back for me? I think a world title for Owen, very possible.
I think if Kristen beats herself, then Owen could very well be there. Dustin, who do you think?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the best chance to dethrone Kristen Tatar is Kristen Tatar herself dethroning herself. And I mean, it would have to take like some type of crumble, like what almost happened to her during the final round at the championship that she just won in Europe, where she had a really difficult final round where she wasn't injured or hurt, anything like that, but she just kind of talked about this like overwhelming mental thing that kind of happened to her that seemingly hasn't really happened before. And so you don't know if that's going to like carry over and weigh on her at all at Worlds, or, you know, the fact that she was able to beat it and still come out with the win. And that was like the one trophy she hadn't had in her cabinet yet. If like that's going to like, you know, kind of get her over the hump. But in reality, I mean, maybe a cybernetically enhanced Paige Pierce post-surgery might be able to come out and just start slinging out there like she's developing some secrets during this downtime, and she's going to be the one that's thrown Kristen Tatar. I mean, that's one route that you could go as well. But I just think in all seriousness, Tatar is too well-rounded. And so what's going to happen for her to get dethroned is some of these other players out there in the field are going to have to develop one of the skills that they don't currently possess, whereas Tatar already has all of them. So, for example, you know, if you take someone like Missy Gannon, who is an incredible putter, who's incredibly accurate with the backhand, has decent distance, you know, probably not too far off Tatar. Tatar's not crazy known for her distance either. But, you know, having someone like her develop a forehand game, you know, to be able to have that well-rounded game to match someone like Tatar, I think that's possible. And I think the other two that you have to look at are players like Ella Hansen and, you know, Holland Handley, who have incredible throwing talent, who clearly are consistent top 5 performers right now when you look at every event they've been playing throughout the course of this year, but they clearly lack the putting that is required to go ahead and grab themselves a title. I mean, the reason why Owen Scoggins got her first elite win of her career was because she was like 10% better, you know, on the putting green than the next closest person to her. And so those people are going to have to rise up to do it. I think it's a fair shot to name Owen like Robbie did, but I just think her window is eventually going to close faster than some of these like more younger players kind of up and coming who just need to develop some skills to challenge Kristen.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you said it, probably the person who has the best chance to dethrone Kristen is Kristen. But I think if Kristen does stumble, I do like own there just for consistency's sake. But FBO is always interesting. I can tell you what we can expect is the rest of that leaderboard from after first place is going to be all over the place over 5 rounds, probably up, down, who knows? So it'll be interesting to watch. And a lot of it might depend on how things start out. All right, all tied up. Final question. True or false question here. So true or false, a world title for Calvin, Gannon, or Simon would clinch player of the year for them. Dustin, what do you think?
All right, I'm going to take them one by one. So I do think it's a different answer for each player. So for Calvin Heimberg, a world title, yes. He has been by far the most consistent player this season, ranked number 1 universally by everyone, I imagine. He's got 3 wins already this season, 2 elite and 1 silver. He's got 10 additional podium finishes. His worst finish was 16th at Champions Cup. Outside of that, he has never placed outside of the top 10 this year. He's leading in almost every metric. You add a world championship to that guy, clearly he's the player of the year, in my opinion. I don't think anybody's catching him. Gannon Buhr, I would also say yes on this one. He's definitely a top 5 player in the world in pretty much anyone's standards. He's got 5 wins already, 3 elites, 2 silvers, with 3 additional podium finishes. He's rarely outside of the top 10. And, he is one of those guys that's just a killer on the putting green, particularly from Circle 2. Great in all the other metrics. You add a 6th win to him, and that 6th win being a world title, I think you're probably calling him the player of the year for sure. Now, with Simon Lizotte, I think was the last person that you named. This one for me is a maybe, because currently I think you would say he's maybe borderline top 5. If not top 5, he's certainly top 10. Obviously, he's fresh off the win at D-Glow after 2 amazing final rounds. And he had a win earlier this season at Music City Open. So he's got 2 elite wins, which is below Gannon, and it's equal to Calvin. So if you're just like talking numbers, that's kind of where he's sitting right now. He's got 7 other finishes in the top 15 this season. So I think if you give him a world championship, he's certainly contending. He's probably like becoming a front runner for it, but then it would all come down, I think, to like what happens at USDGC. Because if Simon gets both USDGC and Worlds, and yeah, he's player of the year. But if he gets Worlds and one of Calvin or Gannon get USDGC, or maybe even like a Maple Hill win for like someone like Gannon, which would just like double the amount of wins that Simon has for the year, then all of a sudden I don't think Simon could just like clinch the number 1 spot with the world title.
Okay, so true, false is Dustin's.
Well, it's true, maybe.
True, maybe. Well, it's true or false. It's true or false.
Okay.
it's very binary. True or false. All right, Robbie. Do you agree?
Half truth is a full lie. And so I think that the question was designed to say, hey, if you had to say for all 3, is it true or false? Not individually. It was not. It was a blanket statement for a blanket answer. And I think I'm going to have to go with false for the whole setup. And the reason being is it's not our final major. Now, sure, it's an easy argument for Calvin. If he wins Worlds, then the consistency, he has that major button stamp on top of it. So now the consistent season has something to show for it. Wow, that's amazing. But if we say, yes, Calvin wins World, automatic player of the year, but then Gannon comes around and he wins USDGC again, back to back. Now we're back in the argument because both have a major win. Now you have Gannon has more than this. So let's flip it on its head. We have Gannon wins this one. Awesome. Then we go to USDGC. Calvin wins. We're back in the same argument. So it's not a clinch either way because there's still another major to happen. And we still have tour championships, which tour championships has to have some impact. I'm sure from the actual like points per player of the year argument, it may not, but there's still 2 major events that happen after Worlds. And so I don't think that any of them, if Calvin was 2 wins up on Gannon or Gannon was 2 or 3 wins up on Calvin, I think, sure, you can have that argument. Then it goes much closer to a clinch. But because of the fact that there's still so much left of the season, would it be a huge turn of momentum in their corner? Absolutely. But we're talking clinch. And do I think that a Worlds win clinches it for either? Or for any of them, simply because Simon Lizotte is in the fold with it? I'm going to have to go false.
So I think I agree with Robbie, but Dustin, do you have a counter?
I think you have to take it each player. I don't think you can do a blanket statement. I think that's kind of BS.
Even one player at a time. Do you think that
Worlds is a clinch, yes. Worlds is a clinch for Calvin.
So
because even if Gannon does go on to win USDGC, they're tied at one major apiece, and Calvin has an overall better body of work for the year. If
Gannon has more wins.
Gannon has more wins.
Yeah, but one of those additional wins is a silver event, which doesn't have as much weight.
And an additional elite.
He has an additional elite.
He has the one additional
silver.
elite. Yes. So what I'm saying is, hold on, let me finish what I was saying.
Let him finish.
So if Calvin wins Worlds, then he would be tied with Gannon for elite or better, and he would have the major, which would then clinch it for him. Gannon Bird already ahead, a major win would clinch it for him. So yes, it can be clinched for those two players, 100%.
But
Simon, no.
But what if Calvin wins, but then Gannon wins MVP and USDGC?
There's still so much left to be had.
I just think with like the 10 additional podium finishes that Calvin has at elite events,
but I
would have to give him the nod, even if there's like a 1-win difference overall for the season.
But it could be a 2-win,
especially if they're tied for majors.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Robbie on this one. I just have to say, I think if the resumes, this is what I'm saying as the impartial judge. I think if Calvin's resume was 2 elites, and I won't even count silvers, whatever. If Calvin's resume was 2 elite series and world championships, and Gannon's resume was 3 elite series and USDGC, I'm already picking Gannon. If you add another elite series to that, I mean, to me, it's not even a question anymore. That's just an undeniable resume. But I don't know.
They put, like, if Simon rattles off, let's say Simon rattles off MVP, he goes back to back there, then he wins USDGC, then he wins the Tour Championships.
I think there's just a little too much skin on the table.
Or Gannon win Worlds.
Wait, hold on a second.
Because Worlds is happening so early before these events, that's why I just don't think it's a clinch. I think does it clinch an incredible season for any of them? Absolutely.
Wait, didn't we just basically agree that it would clinch it for Gannon in that whole discussion that we just had? How would it not clinch it for Gannon?
So Gannon wins that. So then we spin it. Calvin wins.
Calvin wins USDGC.
Calvin wins USDGC. Calvin wins Tour Championship.
No, because then Gannon or Calvin are tied on majors, right? One got Worlds, one got USDGC. Gannon would then in that situation have either equal wins to Calvin or one additional win. So then it does
have equal wins, Dustin. To quote my friend Dustin, the overall body of work that he's had throughout the rest of the season.
Oh, now you
doesn't put them on the same page.
It's convenient for you. Okay.
If they're equal, yes, that's when it matters, buddy.
Okay.
Use your own words.
Okay. I see how it's conditional.
I know it's hard to think about it because you talked for so much this episode, but like it's.
Oh my God!
I'm pretty sure you talked just as much as I have during this final. So.
Because we made it to the finals, and one of us got to talk a lot less to get there.
Let us know in the comments if you agree with Dustin or if your team Robbie, what you think. I tend to agree with Robbie on this one, but there's 2 sides to every coin. So let me know in the comments what you think. I'm just one judge in the hot seat. So Robbie, Robbie, I'm not sure if I'm going to get you guys any final words. You guys are too fired up. I'll
just say, a while ago,
Brodie went anonymous because he had to get out of the heat.
I donated 1 point to Brodie Smith to go on, and he ended up winning it. And what happened today? That 1 point came back. The 1 point argument officially done. Here we go. Roll Tide.
All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Debate Night. Make sure to tune into Worlds to see if any of these predictions come true. I'm sure some of them will. If Paul Ulibarri wins Worlds, that would probably be ridiculous. Or Nate Sexton. I think that was probably the craziest one. But that's been another episode of Debate Night. We will see you next week.